I'm Taluka from Markers and Minions, and tonight's live video is going to focus on 5th grade Unit 1. So I have been filming live videos for the past 2 weeks now, starting down in K, in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. Yesterday was 4th grade, and just before I get into tonight, I want to let you all know, if you were tuned into yesterday's for whatever reason, the Facebook took it down, flagged it as spam, and it's disappeared into the world of the internet. So I put in a support ticket with Facebook. I'm pretty upset. I put in a support ticket. They're reviewing it. Who knows how long that takes? But yeah, since it was filmed live, I also I didn't get a chance to like download it and save it to my computer. So that was over an hour of planning just down the drain. So fingers crossed it doesn't happen again tonight, but I'm pretty sure that the reasoning behind it is because I posted the link to get the Unit 1 resources, because as I'm planning, I'm like filling out the templates, and I'm writing notes, I'm creating an anchor chart, and I'm sending it to everybody. And so because I was using a link with my videos for X amount of days in a row, I think that's why it flagged me. So 5th grade teachers, I'm gonna have to find another way to get you these resources at the very end. So yeah, we'll experiment with that. All right, 5th grade. So I was planning today, it took me hours. I got really into Unit 1 for 5th grade. It's a very deep subject matter. Yeah, it's intense, and the texts require a ton of analysis. They're really great, powerful texts. You can have a lot of wonderful classroom discussions around them. Hi, Gail. So anyway, let me just show you what I did for today. I came up with, this is just my notes. These are just my notes. I came up with a Google Slides presentation. Don't get too excited, it's just 3 slides. But the first slide, I embedded a YouTube video of Lyndon Johnson's, President Lyndon B. Johnson's, the Voting Rights Act address. So like I found a snippet, like a minute long, from what the kids are reading about. And I have it so that when you play that slide, it goes straight to that part. The next slide, I embedded a YouTube video that's like a quick bio on Thurgood Marshall. It's like 2 minutes, which is, you'll be reading about Thurgood, God, I'm so tired, guys. Thurgood Marshall's Nobel Liberty Medal acceptance speech thing in week 3. So you'll be able to provide a little bit of background there. And then the 3rd slide I put in there is a read aloud for picture book, actually, it's called Say Something. And it's about speaking up. They're speaking out against things and speaking up for what you believe in and what you're thinking. And that kind of connects to one of the extension ideas that I came up with. So these are the ideas for extending this unit or enhancing them. So the Say Something activity, I would say read the book or play the read aloud on YouTube, and facilitate an activity in which the students say something that they feel. And then the whole idea is that they're doing it through a medium of their choice, just like in the book. So you can do it as an isolated activity. You can do it after reading a particular text in Unit 1. You can do it after the entire unit is over, like a reflection of some sort. I just think that ties in well with the concepts in Unit 1. And then, of course, there's like a political activism project. I linked several resources for social justice read-alouds, like really good titles, picture books and novels that are, around the idea of social justice. So there's a read-aloud list there. Today's Constitution Day, so there's the website to all the lesson plans and whatnot around Constitution Day. And yeah, another project I came up with was like write a modern day constitution, publishing it through modern means like digitally, and write it in your own words. What do you believe in? What do you think the government, what rules should the government or freedoms should the government allow American citizens to have, etc. So anyway, those are there for you here. I also have the completed planning templates, which are done for California and national. I will be filling those out during our planning session tonight. But if at any point, if I'm moving too quickly, don't worry. You can have the completed plans sent to you. It's all digital and it's editable, so you can change, you can move lessons around. And tonight, see how there's 3 different colors here? I'm going to be using those same 3 colors, and you'll see what each color represents in your week, in your ELA block. All right, and then the anchor chart. So I think this is what took me the longest time today, because I went into 5th grade Unit 1 thinking like this is the Constitution unit. Like this unit is all about the Constitution, which is why I know teachers like to do it sometimes later in the year. They try to do the flip-flop where, but then I started reading through the text and I thought, well, the Constitution is a small part of this unit. This unit is so much greater than just that piece of American history. Yes, it starts with that first short read about the Constitution and what it is and why we have it. And the idea kind of builds upon that in the subsequent texts that follow, the idea of the government and laws and enforcing those laws and how those laws can evolve over time as society and societal beliefs change over time. But that's really what I was focusing on because that seemed to be more of an emphasis with all of the texts that you'll be reading. So let me show you the anchor chart that I made today. So this is your copy. So what you would do is project this on your dot camera and trace it onto anchor chart paper or butcher paper. And you can either do it like as a project glide strategy where you trace it with pencil and then you go over it as you're teaching it with marker, or you can have it ready to go with marker already. But the 3 areas of focus that I came up with were, well, first of all, this visual here. And you all saw it, so now let me show you my analysis, my breakdown of it. The fist is obviously a symbol for like fighting, protest, strength. And then I made these just out of shapes. I hope it looks accurate. This is like a symbol for justice or fairness, balance of power. And then I created this here, this cycle. And basically, I think this one line sums up the entire unit, this idea that we can do better. We're always evolving, we can always do better. And so this cycle is we can do better, people fight for justice, and impact is made, and then we realize we can do better. So I thought that was a nice visual also to put in there because that's really the whole theme of Thurgood Marshall's speech in week 3. Here I have the key ideas or the key main like takeaways, my takeaways after I read through the entire unit. So I wrote the United States of America, a nation that values unity with a history of division. And then to overcome, we must evolve. People fight for equality, and there's a constant state of evolution. And I underline certain words because those are words that you're going to want to use in your chart because those are words that are going to appear in the weekly text. So if you go ahead and start talking about what these ideas are already, then the kids will be able to make the connections to the anchor chart as you're reading these really meaty texts. All right. Then we have human rights. So people are born with certain liberties. And again, I chose the word liberties because that's incorporated. Here's my connection to short read 1. The U.S. Constitution lists the basic human rights. That's it. That's all I wrote for Constitution. Then here, these bullet points connect to short read number 2 and both of the extended reads for weeks 2 and 3. So some examples of injustice in American history are slavery, segregation, and discrimination. Okay? And then impact, and as you're teaching this, I think you'll end on this, you'll finish up, talking about these injustices, and then you'll kind of draw an arrow or connect it somehow to, well, what happens next when there are these injustices. So when people demand fairness and equality, they fight for social justice. Laws evolve as beliefs evolve, and political movements and activists have fought for different freedoms or rights. And this part here really connects to short read number 2 and the week 2 extended read. Okay? And then here I left a space. When you're projecting your anchor chart, you can draw this box or just leave it, blank. But I thought it would be neat to print out visuals, pictures of the people that you're going to be reading about, and stick them on your chart as you are moving through these talking points, or even like pictures from history that might be relevant to what you're reading. All right, so that is the anchor chart. And there's also going to be a student version where they can fill in the blanks, either as you're teaching the chart or afterwards. And I just printed this quote out. This is one of the paragraphs in the week 3 text, the extended read. It's from Thurgood Marshall's speech. And I thought that this really encompassed the entire unit. So if not, even if you don't go over this with the kids, I think even just for you, like this is a really good starting point. It's the quote, it's on, I think it's paragraph 10, could be wrong now, but it's a quote saying, we cannot play ostrich. Basically, we must dissent because America can do better, because American has no choice but to do better. Okay, so it's basically, we need to be better. All right, so I thought that was a nice way to sum it all up. And again, I'll get those to you somehow later tonight. It's all included in a zipped file, and I have an email system that emails it out automatically as soon as you follow the link that I give you, that I can hopefully give you without Facebook shutting me down. You'll input your email, and then you'll automatically get an email with this stuff sent to you. And I do it that way so that I don't have to manually send emails all day, every day while I've been doing this for the last couple weeks. But since it's an automatic thing, Facebook doesn't like it because it thinks it's spam. But anyway. All right, so oh, it's right there. So I don't have the TRS, but what I do is I plan using the online version, and I just took screenshots of the TRS and printed them out. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. If you are National Edition, yours looks slightly different, looks something like this in your TRS. When you open up to week 1, week 2, week 3, there'll be a page where there's this pacing guide here, and all your lessons are numbered and listed. Now in the California edition, this is what ours looks like. It looks more like a list with the text, the stories off to the side, the pictures of what that looks like. And here they are as well, numbered, not in any sort of pacing, broken up by day or anything. Here's weeks 2 and weeks 3. So I'm going to be using this to plan, but in your TRS, you'll just be flipping through the weeks. There's also the cardstock insert that it's at the front of your TRS, which I sometimes used to plan, but frankly I like this way better because you can see exactly what lessons go with what text. Whereas on the cardstock insert in the beginning of the TRS, it just throws all the skills and strategies at you, and you can't really make these connections or process. So the whole goal of doing this and filling out these blank templates is not because it's not already done for you, because yeah, it's in the TRS, it's there, but by extracting all the skills and strategies, you're processing and you're seeing how the weeks unfold, how the unit comes together, and basically like what I did today, I really was able to synthesize and come up with okay, I truly know what I'm teaching now. I know exactly where I need to be, where I need to get. All right, and so the same is going to happen with your ELA lessons. You're going to see okay, I really need to emphasize this lesson, or I don't really need to focus on that as much, or maybe I can find ways to combine things, cut things down, okay? All right. So Unit 1, our essential question is, why do laws continue to evolve? Okay, and now when I'm filling out this unit overview, I'm going to start with close reading skills, and I'm going to go this way. Okay, so for week 1, this is where I'm going to look. National teachers, you're going to look at this layout, and you're going to find all of your lessons that have to do with analyzing the text, so like comprehension-based lessons, close reading. And California teachers, you're going to look at the lessons that are under the short reads. So, and we're going to use red. This is red. Okay, so the first lesson I have is always the key details and main idea. Then I see analyze text structure or chronology. And national, you'll notice that like the wording is slightly different, but that's still more or less the same lesson. So I'm going to write chronology, text structure lesson. Then I see lesson 5 for California is analyze genre features. Now national features. In your edition, I'm pretty sure, yeah, all of the genre features lessons were taken out and replaced with something else. So you don't have that lesson. You've got, what is it, draw inferences, right? Draw inferences for your third one. Then I've got that second main idea, key details lesson, which I'm not going to write down. I've already got that there. Then I see another genre features one for California. Okay, I'm going to list that. And now that I have 2 different lessons here on genre features, I should probably add a little bit more detail. So that first one is going to be informational text, info text, and the second one is going to be persuasive speech. So I'm just going to write that small. Info text, persuasive speech. And then I see analyze reasons and evidence. So I'm going to write reasons and evidence. And then finally, the lesson 14, that last lesson of the week. Where is it? Yeah. It's going to be compare, contrast, or integrate information. So it's the lesson where it's the 5.9 standard. You're taking 2 texts and you're analyzing them side by side. You're doing a cross-text analysis. All right. So now I have week 1 done, and I notice that there's no build vocabulary lesson in week 1. So, because sometimes we'll have like a context clues lesson or some sort of explicit lesson where we're focusing on the vocabulary that's in the text. So I'm going to write none right here, and I'm going to make a mental note of that because you're definitely going to need to spend some time building vocabulary as you're reading, whether that's, you know, through the chart or having the students kind of do like an informal lesson, which I'll talk about in a little bit, like where I fit that in. All right, so now week 2, let me get my printed TRS. I see that there's always going to be those 2 lessons that go with your extended read. So key details and main idea, or key details summarize, something along those lines. I'm going to write key details, main idea. Okay, then I see The next lesson here says, use context clues to define domain-specific vocabulary. So there is a explicit vocab lesson that week. So I'm going to write that here, and then I'm also going to write it on the line for build vocabulary. Just so I know, like, oh, thank goodness we have some time dedicated to building the vocabulary. Okay. Then I see analyze author's use of language, or evaluate author's use of language. I'm just going to write author's language. And don't worry, national teachers, you're like, what? This is not what mine looks like. I'm going to hold yours up in just a second. I completed yours as well. You have some differences in lessons. Okay, then I see use text evidence to draw inferences. I'm just going to write draw inferences. And then I see one more lesson at the bottom, lesson 14, where it's the compare contrast. All right, now before I hold nationals up, I want to just show what my thought process is now at this point. So what I want to do is compare these weeks side by side, and I want to see what spirals over into the next week and what doesn't. Okay, so take a look, and if you notice any patterns or things coming up more than once, you're going to draw a little spiral sign next to it so that you know, like, okay, if I don't rock it in the first week, I'm going to have another chance. Sigh of relief in the next week, okay? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if it's not repeating, then that might be something like, okay, mental note, I'm going to make sure that I get to that in week 1 because it's not repeated again in week 2. We'll see about week 3. All right, now national, here's yours so far. And what I see with yours is you've got that chronology lesson, text structure, where you're sequencing the events. That repeats. Okay, so that's an emphasis in this unit. I see draw inferences, that repeats. Okay. And then for everybody, the first lesson and the last lesson, the key details, main idea, kids are going to do that for the rest of their lives with every text they ever read ever. So that's always going to repeat. And then the lesson 14 is always going to be that cross-text analysis. So I'm really looking at like those lessons in the middle to see what's spiraling there. Yes, Kate, you can always replay this video afterwards. So my videos don't go anywhere unless Facebook decides that it's spam. That's the first time that ever happened last night. But yeah, as soon as I like end this live video, it'll become available as a replay, and you can always find it by clicking on the videos tab. You can go back there and watch videos of me 2 years ago in there. All right, now week 3, we've got the key details, main idea again. We've got analyze graphic features. I see identify elements of persuasive text. So that sounds sort of like a genre features lesson. Sorry, elements of, I hear you singing. Persuasive text. And use text evidence to make inferences. So I'm going to write draw inferences again. Then integrate information. Okay, so this is what California looks like so far. And this is what national looks like so far. So go ahead and start to notice those patterns and put your spiral signs. All right, now, next on the list is the spelling or the phonics. So that is going to be found in your word study lessons. So I'm going to show you what this looks like on the national layout here. So that's going to be lesson 8. Notice how spelling is not introduced until day 3 in Benchmarks Planner. But anyway, that's your skill for the week. Okay, so find that lesson in all 3 weeks. It's going to look like this for California edition. It's under word study. So find that lesson in all 3 weeks and write those skills. These ones don't spiral. Okay, so I've got short vowels. Then week 2, I've got long vowels. And week 3 are controlled vowels. We've got E-R-I-R-U-R. All right, and I'm doing that in blue. Everything relating to spelling is in blue. Sounds good, Erica. See you later. All right. It's late where she lives. Okay, now the next part, I'm going to use green, and it's language skill and writing type, and I'm going to do both of those in green because these are married in Benchmark. You're teaching your language, your conventions within context of writing, okay? So because of that, you're going to find your week's language skill in your drafting lesson. So you'll actually have to go into that lesson. So for example, in week 1, it's going to be lesson 12, drafting. You'll go into there, you'll open the spread, the TRS, and then in the second page, you'll see build language, and that's where the skill will be. Okay. Now for week 1, I already did this for you. So it's going to be run-on sentences for California, and it's going to be verb tenses for national. For week 2, California, it's going to be shifts in verb tense and the perfect tense. Shifts in verb tense and perfect tense. And national, it'll be commas. And then week 3, California, is a review of shifts in verb tense. And for national, it's going to be use reference materials to check spelling. So I'll hold both of those up. So here's where I am so far. California. And national. There it is here. Language, verb, tenses, commas, and then use reference materials. All right. And now the writing type. So for California, our writing is going to spiral through the 3 types of writing throughout each unit. So it's always going to be like 1 week on narrative, 1 week on opinion, 1 week on informative. There are other units where you go more into like research. Those are research units. But for the most part, that's our pattern. So for week 1 in California, I see right here where it says writing to sources. See what it says read and analyze an informative prompt. So that's my writing type. I'm just going to write informative. Now national, yours says personal letter, so that's going to be more of a narrative. And then go ahead and find your writing for the other 2 weeks. So California, I see narrative for week 2 and opinion for week 3. In national, you have something called performance task practice. So I will go into that and explain the difference with that and what that looks like for you when we go into our weekly breakdown. All right. Jessica, where did I print this out? So I took a screenshot of my online TRS. I went into, I clicked on the virtual TRS, and then I clicked on week 1, and it's the first thing that pops up. And I click on week 2, first thing that pops up. Week 3, first thing that pops up is this list. And it's the same in your physical TRS. When you thumb through each week, this is going to be at the beginning. Hi, Tina. Yeah, it's the same sort of process, right? So you can follow along. My first year of this Facebook group, I did these planning videos every Sunday evening, and I always planned third because that's what I was teaching. But I had all grade levels watching, and they were kind of following along and just plugging in their own skills and texts. All right, so now we're going to switch on over to the week 1 layout. And here's where I stray the most from the benchmark weekly layout. And I'm going to use this national edition layout or view. It's much more visual in terms of, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. California, it's the same like intention. And I'm going to show you how mine's different. So first of all, I mentioned that I was not a fan of this lesson, this spelling lesson, not happening until day 3. So I went ahead and I moved that up to day 1 as an explicit spelling lesson, okay? The reason why I did that is so that the kids can practice their spelling pattern, their spelling words, using different word work activities during their centers all week long. Similarly, remember how I said that it's not until the drafting lesson where the language skill is introduced for the week. So I did the same thing where I took that language skill and I bumped that up to day 1, and I just teach it in isolation, which is okay because they're going to get it in context later in the week. And I bumped that to day 1 as well. So you will see that right here. I'm going to use my colors to underline. We've got phonics and language introduced on day 1. And now the way that I do that is just with the word work pamphlet that I made, or you can print off the pages from the practice option on Benchmark Universe. Just print out like those, the black line masters for the spelling and grammar for the week. Okay, that's one main difference. Second difference is, and you'll see this throughout every week, is the way that I like to do it is I like to do 3 reads method. Whenever we encounter a new text, I read it to the kids first as the teacher. Here's where I, model fluent reading, and I really make it exciting, try to make it exciting. We don't go into any teaching yet. So I literally just read it first word to last word. After that, in week 1, the texts are pretty short. They're just the short reads. So we have time for the kids to immediately go back after they've listened to it, after I'm done reading it aloud. They immediately go back and they read with their pen and they annotate. And I don't grade for annotation at this point. I don't tell them what to annotate. I don't tell them what symbols to use. And the purpose of that is I just want them to practice a little bit of independent reading, and I want them to connect with the text in some way. So in my class, that looked like some kids were reading, whisper reading to themselves and annotating. Some kids were reading with their partner and annotating. Some kids can't read, so they're putting symbols by the images. Okay, so it's just a way for them to connect with that weekly text in some way. Then the third time we reread it is when we hone in and we close read. So after I do my first and then their second read, we don't close read. That's overkill. That's a lot. So I push close reading to the next day. So that's where one of the differences is, because with benchmark, you're close reading, or you're finding the key details. I wouldn't exactly say that's close reading because you're looking at the whole thing, but you're finding key details the first time you read it, which is normal protocol, not just benchmark. But yeah, I don't like to do that. So I pushed that to day 2. And because of that, all of your other lessons get pushed as well. So that's why I have to kind of get creative in squeezing them in. Also, in week 1, that's where you've got the most amount of lessons because you've got 2 texts. So you have 7 close reading lessons And if you're following this sort of like pattern, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 days to do those 7 lessons. So that's where I think, okay, I'm going to cut some out. I'm going to combine, I'm going to condense, I'm going to get creative in some way. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to use my red, and I'm going to just do my close reading skills. I'm just going to plug those in. So my first text is creating the Constitution. And on day 2, that's when I'm going to do my key details and main idea lesson on that. So day 1, I'm going to say Monday, when we sit down, I read it, they read it, and we put it away. Next day, when we sit down on the carpet, I say, okay, open back up to creating the Constitution that we read yesterday. And now let's pull out some of the key details and talk about what the main idea is. Then that's it. All right. In terms of close reading, oh, I forgot. Also, when my kids are annotating, I always follow up and I say, okay, well, when you were annotating, what words did you circle? What words were unfamiliar to you? And we review them together. So I let the students choose their own vocabulary words. And what that looks like is they'll raise their hand, they'll say, oh, I circled this word. And then my other kids will go, me too, because a lot of the times it's the same words. Sometimes it's not, but a lot of the times it is. And then I will do like a very quick lesson around, well, let's figure out what this means. Let's read the sentences around it, see if we can figure out clues. Let's look at the word parts. Whatever your strategy is, just quick, like, let's acknowledge that this has tough, tricky language in it, and we're going to make sense of it, and then we're going to analyze for the key details, okay? So then, that's it for close reading. Day 3 is sort of my transition. So I do one more close reading, to put it on this side, for short read 1, but then it's also the day that I introduce short read number 2, okay? And so, let's see. So then I'm going to go to this overview, and I'm going to see what my next lesson is for creating the Constitution, and it's going to be text structure chronology lesson for California, chronology. Okay, so now we're going to be putting it in some sort of order. Yeah, same for national. All right. Now, here's where, as I was planning for 5th today, I thought, well, okay, there's a lot of lessons that go with short read number 1 that I don't necessarily want to skip. That chronology lesson, super important. We saw that kind of comes up several times. So you want to touch on that because it's emphasized. There's also the draw inferences lesson though. And that only goes with creating the Constitution, your first short read. So if you notice, there isn't that space here, because typically I do like one more lesson and then I switch over to short read 2. This is like the only exception where I thought, well, maybe I would do, instead of doing my 2 close reading lessons here on day 4, I would bump one up and do that here, because it still pertains to short read 1. Does that make sense? And that's going to be lesson, what is it, 5? Yeah, draw inferences. All right. Once those are done with creating the Constitution, you're going to introduce your second short read, which is President Lyndon Johnson's Voting Rights Act address. I'm going to put President LBJ's address. All right. And I already did the key details and main idea lesson for creating the Constitution here on day 2. So I don't really want to do that again because they're already getting that practice there. I'd rather use this time to get into one of those other close reading lessons. So I'm going to choose reasons and evidence. Okay, and I'm going to skip right over those genre features lessons, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second, California users. So, like I said, you've got all of these close reading lessons in week 1. You got 7 of them, and you have to kind of get creative with the placement, because otherwise you're going to be teaching benchmark from morning until night, and your week 1 is going to all of a sudden become 2 weeks long, and it's nuts. So one of the ways that I thought you could also get creative with this first week, California users, is the genre features lessons, where you're going over what an informational text is and what a persuasive text is. I would say pre-teach that like ahead of time with an anchor chart that you prepare. And then once you start analyzing these texts and start reading them, then just like informally make connections to your genre features chart. Okay, so like, oh, look, remember we talked about a persuasive text? I can tell this is a persuasive text because he just used this language. And so you're making the connections as you're reading. So that's a way to still expose students to this whole like skill of analyzing a genre without having to dedicate some of your whole class time to it. All right, and national teachers, I got creative with yours too. I don't know where it is, but all of my notes, when I was doing this morning, I typed it all up. All of my notes will get emailed to you, so you can see kind of my thought process. All right, and now in day 5, it's your last lesson, your compare text lesson, and that can, for California, is like compare and contrast the 2 short reads. And national teachers, I thought yours was interesting because the 2 short reads. I thought yours was interesting because you have 2 really good lessons on comparing and contrasting in week 1. You've got lesson 10, which is, let's see, I wrote it down. Comparing and contrasting the text structure. And then you've got lesson 14, which is integrate information. So I thought for that section, you could really get away with doing either one, and I would lean towards the lesson 10 actually, comparing and contrasting the text structure, only because that seems to be a real emphasis in Unit 1. So you're like teaching chronology, right? You might as well then use that day to do the compare contrast the different structures. All right. Are these individual planning sheets that you're working on right now in your TPT store, or is this part of what you'll be sending out? Yeah, these I actually made 2 years ago. They're on my TPT store for free, and they're what I use for these Plan With Me videos. So you can always go there and download these blank ones. And then, yeah, just this year, I'm just trying something new where I like did Unit 1 for all, I'm doing it for all grade levels. And in order to prepare, I've been filling them out myself, so I might as well send those out too. So in the email, you'll get them totally filled out. But for future units, if you want to keep doing this process, you can find them for free on my TPT. All right, thank you. So helpful to hear how you think the unit through. Okay, good. I don't know if like, you know, when it's just my own like creative interpretation, so it's kind of hard to like know if people are following along or if you're totally lost. But I hope that the takeaway, even if you're kind of confused with my thought process, I hope that your takeaway is that you have the freedom to do this. Okay, this is not like binding. If you don't do it this way, it's gonna be okay. So you have to do what works for you, and that's essentially how this was born, because I finally sat down after doing a year of benchmark with a combo too. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I need to think of something else, and so this is very personal to me. So yeah, you have that option, that flexibility. All right, so now I'm going to circle back And I'm going to plug in some of my other things here. So I'm going to go to my focus on phonics. So I'm introducing that on day 1, the spelling, and then they're practicing their word work in their centers all week. Day 3, though, I want to make sure that I'm teaching the spelling pattern within context. So I'm going to bring in my word study text. And so what that is for week 1 is Susan B. Anthony. So I'm going to write that. You'll see a space under day 3 for that. So I wrote Susan B. Anthony, and then I'm also writing here that it's lesson 11. All right, so that's where the kids are actually going in and reading that complementary short text, and they're finding spelling words, and they're finding words that are all, short vowels? Yeah. And that's usually like I'll have them just go through and highlight, or we'll do one big class word sort, or they might have, I think Benchmark will give you like a little personal word sort that you can print out in the weekly presentation. So there's options for that. All right, and then I'm going to list my spelling words here just so that I have it as a quick reference. So the first one is amendments. We've got activists. They're the same for California National. Benefited. Citizens. Impressive. Insults. Public. And topic. So there are always 8. There are 10 spaces here because 2nd grade, which also uses this planner, has 10 words. All right, so these are going to be words that you're going to find in your weekly reading. And they also follow your pattern. All right. And then I'm going to fill in my language and writing, which are the same color. So day 1, I introduce it isolated, and it's going to be what you put here. Okay, so pull out that week 1 grammar skill. And just know that when you are writing, that's what your focus is going to be on. So you're going to try to weave that into your drafting all week. Now, day 1, you're going to analyze the prompt or the mentor text, national teachers. So that's basically what that looks like for California is you're going to be given either, you can use the model prompt or the student prompt. There are 2 for each week. So the model prompt is going to be found in your TRS, and then the student prompt is in their magazines. On the Build, Reflect, Write page, there's a prompt there. It's always going to be the same type of writing, but the topic is going to be different. Now the idea is, I hear like intense crying out there. The idea is that you model the writing strategies, and then they transfer that knowledge to their own specific student prompt. For me personally, I focus on one prompt with my 3rd graders, and I just choose whichever one I like better, or I might come up with a combination of the 2 if it's applicable. Now for the model prompt, it's going to be explain Madison's role in creating the Constitution, and the student prompt is explain what the Constitution is and why it was written. All right, so just keep that in mind, that that's kind of how I approach the weekly writing. So I'm just going to write informative right here. If you're national, you'll write read and analyze the mentor text. Now day 2 is lesson 6, and it's going to be find text evidence. So that is where you then have the kids go back to the text, creating the Constitution, and they pull out lines that they think is going to support their writing well. So evidence or details that they want to lift and incorporate into their writing at some point. I'm going to finish with California, and then national teachers, I'll explain where yours sort of deviates. Now, day 3, after you've analyzed the prompt, you know what you're writing about, and you have some details or inspiration, then you're going to plan. And this is where I always tell teachers, like, bring in your other writing strategies and curriculum and practices that you already know and love. That planning day is where I would bring in my Step Up to Writing color coding, sometimes a thinking map or a Step Up to Writing graphic organizer to help me plan the benchmark writing. So it's a nice way to bring your former teaching practices together. Then day 4, you're going to start your drafting. And honestly, for me, I've shared this in the past, the day that I plan on day 3, a lot of the times I can go ahead and begin drafting as well. I'm able to kind of like put those together sometimes, and then it's carried over into the next day. Now, for these drafts, this weekly writing, you kind of have to like let go of the idea of that like you're going to get something up on your board, because you're not. A lot of the times this is going to be more of like it's writing the sources. So it's more of a, I don't want to say quick write, but it's not going to be like a drawn out, like 5-paragraph, well-developed essay. Okay. So it's possible to do it in one day because it's not very long, but it is easier if you can kind of use 2 days for that. I'll just say that. And then day 5, it's going to be lesson 15, and that's always where you go in and revise and edit. So that's where you're going to bring in a revision skill and an edit skill, which are in your TRS. You'll see what I have my kids do. Instead of going and revising and editing their entire drafts from the day prior, I have them just pull out one sentence from their draft, rewrite it on another piece of paper, revise it using the skill I just taught them, and then pull out another sentence and edit it using the edit skill. So afterwards, they have like 2 really awesome sentences. And that's a lot easier for like me to assess as well, to see like, well, did they get it? Yes or no? And it's also a little more manageable for the kids. So that is the sequence for our California writing. It's pretty much always going to be that pattern. Like I said, there are a few units where it's like research writing, but this is the pattern your kids are going to get used to. All right, now week 1 for national, you're going to be analyzing a mentor text, then you're going to be analyzing the prompt, and then it says review the source text. So you're going to go back to the source, creating the Constitution, and you're going to be basically essentially doing what we're doing, like pulling out inspiration and gathering details that are going to help you formulate your ideas for writing. Then you're going to plan and you're going to draft, same as us. And then on day 5, national teachers, you always bring in your language focus. So in this case, it's verb tenses. It's like a pretty detailed lesson for your language. All right, that's week 1, boys and girls. Weeks 2 and weeks 3 are easier because there's not that much like moving around. You have less lessons and only one text. You have an extended read now. So for me, weeks 2 and weeks 3 are a lot more manageable. Bailey, did you find that the lessons took you a lot longer than the allotted time? Yeah, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of planning. So as I began planning more and more this way, and actually not just like looking at the TRS, but actually like, okay, digesting it and processing it and pulling all the skills out, then I was able to see the spiral, like really see it. And then that kind of helped me be able to trust it and know that like, okay, if it's totally going over their heads right now, it's going to be okay if I just cut it off at 20 minutes and move on. I will say, like, in 5th grade, I don't know if they give you like 20 minutes or if it's more like 10 or 15. For me, 3rd grade, like it's 20 minutes. Like, sometimes 17, but for the most part, that's how long it's going to take me. And it takes practice. It'll take you a lot of time getting you there. And you'll notice also in the earlier units, when you go in to teach a lesson, look over it first before you actually do it. That way you can like close a TRS and do your thing, but also see what your role is in it. And you'll see that there's going to be a lot of modeling. I know this is talked about a lot in our group, but it's true, a ton of modeling in these earlier units, because you're just exposing, you know, exposing your thought process, your metacognition, and they're witnessing you grapple with the text, right? And make sense of it with these different strategies. As the units progress, you'll notice that the students become more responsible, like they have more of a role in your lessons. And that's why they say, like, don't swap units, for example, units 1 and 7, because the lesson, the actual lesson, it's going to look a lot different. If you switch like units 1 and 2, which I know a lot of 5th grade teachers like to do, no big deal. But yeah, that was a very long answer, sorry. Go check on the baby. No, Luke, my husband's on baby duty. He can handle it. Let's see. So my total block is from when we come back from recess, so at 10:40, kids sit down, we do our back-to-back mini lessons. I don't do mini lesson, then break up into independent small group mini. I don't do that. It's too much transitioning for me. So they sit on the carpet for my back-to-back mini lessons, everything that you see in these squares. And then that's until about 11:30. And then 11:30 to 12, we break up into our small groups. So in all, 10:40 to 12. So I'm going to post, Melissa, I'm going to post the link for where you can submit your email to get all of this stuff emailed to you. Hopefully Facebook doesn't shut me down. I'm going to just put it in the comments, fingers crossed. That should work. If you click on that, you'll see like a screen that says 5th grade unit 1 planned for me. It says join my email list to have completed planning templates, teacher notes, extension ideas, and an anchor chart sent to you. So you'll just fill that out and then bam, my computer will do it. And then I'll also, at the end of this, go in and to our event, you know, our 5th grade planning event from tonight, and I'll link it there as well. This is kind of a test to see if Facebook still likes me. Looks like it's still there. All right, week 2, the extended read is going to be the Dred Scott decision. So you'll be examining the role of the Supreme Court and the case, the infamous case, Dred Scott decision. And basically how through the persistence and time, this case is developed and laws finally evolve, and it's this story. Okay, so it's kind of building off of unit 1 or week 1 in that way, that now our society is evolving and our laws have to kind of reflect that change. All right, so day 2. Remember I said day 1, I read it to them. That's it. With these extended reads that are really long, sometimes the kids have the stamina to go back and do their second read. Sometimes I say, don't worry, like I read through it. Let's call it a day. We'll come back to it tomorrow. So sometimes that gets pushed, and that's how we start our next day. So that's fine to do it that way as well. And then we briefly go over vocabulary. And then there's the key details and main idea lesson. And I don't break that up into 2 days, right? I'm not doing it day 1 and day 2. So what I do is I just allocate time for it right there. And I might not do the entire text. Okay, so I might just pull out some of the key details, talk about the main idea. But it's really easy to get lost in the TRS in those lessons because they want to pull out key details from like every paragraph, and it's a lot. Okay, then the next lesson would be a context clues lesson. Okay, 6. This is always 6. This is always 8. This is always 11. That's another way to kind of look at it. Okay, this is going to be the author's language. You're going to analyze the language and then draw inferences. And this is always lesson 14, where you're doing a compare contrast. And for California, you are comparing and contrasting, creating the Constitution, which was short read number 1 from week 1, and then this week's extended read. Okay, so that's California. Here's national. So you're doing context, main ideas, details, context clues, chronology, so that text structure lesson again. Inferencing is the same as us, and then that's the same. So your only difference is lesson 8. It was really fun making those close reading companions where I had to like have both editions open. So many little slight differences. All right. Now we've got the phonics on day 1. And then again in context on day 3. And that text is going to be Mrs. Stowe and the President. And the Prez. And that's going to be lesson 12. And our focus for spelling is long vowels. And our words are contained, devoted, freedom, future, nation, reason, replied, rights. Do you have your ELA block schedule anywhere on the Google Drive? I would like to see how you do small groups versus mini lessons back to back. Not on the Google Drive, but I have so much in terms of like, I've done videos on it and I've done blog posts about it. So these are basically every day, this is what I do back to back. Anything that you see in these squares, I'm doing with my kids on the carpet. And then once we're done with these lessons, then we transition once, we go to our center. I pull my guided reading group and I work with them for 30 minutes. So Andrea, afterwards, I can link you to like a blog post I wrote about it and a video if you'd like to, where I talk about my small groups and how I structure them. All right, then we're gonna go into our writing. So it's going to be a narrative. National, just ignore me for a minute. I'll come back to you in a minute. So narrative prompt, so the model prompt is write a reflection from Susan B. Anthony's point of view, and the student prompt is write a reflection from Dred Scott's point of view. So you can choose one of those, or you can be a superstar teacher and incorporate both of them. Then it follows the regular progression of finding text evidence, planning, drafting, and then revising and editing. Now, national teachers, you've got your first performance task practice of the year, week 2. So you're going to, by the way, all of your performance task materials, your writing materials, are going to be found on the weekly presentation. So you can go in your online TRS. The easiest way to find it is to actually like open up, for example, lesson 4 of week 2 online, and then in the material section, you'll see it hyperlinked. So you'll be able to print out like all of the pages that go with the performance task. Or if you're using my writing booklets, you don't have to print them out. You can just project them and then the students respond in their writing booklet. All right, so the students are not actually going to be really writing very much at all during the writing block for performance task practice. First, they're going to read and analyze the text. So there's a text that you'll print out or project. Then they're going to answer two-part questions. So this is where you're training them how to answer a question that has a part A and a part B. Then how you're going to train them how to answer constructed response questions. So that's where they incorporate evidence, text evidence, and they write a written response. Then in day 4, multi-response questions, so questions that have more than one answer. And then day 5, always language focus. All right, and your week 3 is going to look very similar to that. You're going to be basically focusing on cross-text questions. So that's what your week 3 performance task focuses on. You'll see a little bit more writing in that. Okay, I'm going to switch over to week 3. And my text, my all-time favorite, is the speech. It gives me chills. Thurgood Marshall's Liberty Medal acceptance speech. Okay, so day 1, here's where I would go into it, read it to them. Maybe even bring in that quote that I showed you guys earlier and just talk about the impact and the importance of his speech and the implications of it. And then in week 2, that's where you can go into the key details and main idea. Then lesson 6, 8, 11, 14, and plug in those close reading skills. Okay. Then circle back to your phonics and then your writing. Is my link still there? Did anyone try it? Okay, our controlled, our spelling words are cultures, determination, earned, first, liberty, person, 30, turned. And the writing for the week will be an opinion text. All right. Oh. And that's it. We did it. All right, where do I find the third grade planning video? I missed it. It is under the videos tab in our group. I think I was wearing a blue shirt, so you'll see that in the thumbnail. All right, oh good. Okay, so that link is working. Facebook hasn't shut it down yet. If you input your email and you don't get anything, try going and doing like a personal email, or initially just sign up with a personal email, because sometimes district servers will block it. Because everyone thinks I'm spam around here. It's because it's an automatic thing. So yeah, that's it. It's a zip file, so you'll have to open it from a computer. And the other things that I've had to say a few times the last couple weeks is that they're PDFs, best opened with Adobe, and you'll have printing success if you use Adobe. I can't speak to like if you're opening it in preview or in your internet browser. So if there's printing issues, try opening it in Adobe, try from another printer. But they're nothing special. They're just PDF files all in a zipped folder. All right, guys, that's it. I'm done. Have a good night, and 6th grade tomorrow. If any of you are combo teachers, see you again. Bye.